Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Pissarro. I'm the Policy Director for the Watershed Institute. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank all the elected officials that are here today, all those who are here physically and in spirit. I want to thank all my colleagues that are here today and are here in spirit but could not make it. I want to thank the sustainable business community for standing with us today. Sorry, that's all right. And I, most importantly, want to thank the thousands of New Jerseyans who have reached out to the governor over the last several months and urged the governor to follow through with his promise to adopt the NJPACT real rules. These resilient environments and landscapes rules are environmental rules, but they're also human health and safety protection rules. Last year, almost 11 months ago, we stood on Asbury Park on the boardwalk on a bright sunny day to congratulate DEP on the proposal of these rules. Later that afternoon, as I sat in my office, over 8 inches of rain fell in parts of New Jersey. From a completely sunny day to a downpour, with roads being flooded and people being devastated. And just as we came out of a months-long drought, we've had multiple severe flood warnings. We've had 5+ inches of rain multiple times in the last several months. And we have local officials having to tell the residents, be careful, our streets are flooded. We were supposed to have an extreme storm last night. Luckily, we didn't. We'll see what tonight and tomorrow brings. It was only a few years ago that most of our communities were devastated by Ida, Lambertville, Manville, Trenton, and others. And those communities are still recovering. You can see some of the pictures behind us. 30 people died from that storm. Others will talk about some more recent events. And all of this is because of extreme weather, because of climate change. Climate change is impacting all aspects of New Jersey life. Extreme weather events are not going to go away. They're not going to reduce. We can wish it so, but it's not going to happen unless we start doing things different. They're going to become more severe and more frequent. Elected officials will talk about the impacts to their communities and how these rules are so important to protect them. The real rules provide solutions now that as we implement over the years, communities will be safer. We add an incremental amount of height to what we're already building, and people will be safer. Each dollar we spend in resilience and preparation. A report from Allstate and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce came out last year and says we have a $7 of return in reduced damages, plus an additional up to $6 in protection of economic activity. Businesses aren't closed, businesses are not shuttered, employees are not losing hours of jobs or having to leave our communities. So the real rules are an economic protection regulation, there are human health and safety, there are environmental. And these rules are more than sea level rise. There are those who want to make it all about that. It's about nature-based systems. It's about reducing flooding all over the state by requiring new development to reduce the amount of stormwater running off our lands and discharging cleaner water. These rules are about reducing the impacts to wetland buffers so those wetlands can better protect us. We've been talking about these rules for over 5 years. In 2020, Governor Murphy recognized the importance of climate change and the need to protect New Jersey from it. Are we stuck in the past and trapped to follow the pattern of minimal change, minimal protection only to realize too late? We should have done better. We have the opportunity to do better today. These protections that the real rules provide in New Jersey are too important, which is why we are here today, why we're here with our colleagues and hundreds and thousands of people in New Jersey. And that is why, for one of the few times in the environmental field, we are launching a public campaign on NJ Globe and New Jersey Advanced Media. This is a significant investment by the environmental community because of how important this issue is. The question we pose today, and we will keep posing, does 2025 Governor Murphy continue to understand the need to protect New Jersey from increasing impacts of storms from climate change? Will he follow through? And we are hopeful that he will, and adopt the NJPACT real rules. Now, I have the extreme pleasure to introduce Lambertville Mayor Andrew Nowak. So I'm going to thank him and turn over the mic. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I first of all will start by saying I absolutely support the adoption of these of the real rules as soon as possible. As a mayor, as anybody who's in government, whether it's at the municipal, county, or state level, really our first priority to our constituents is health and safety. It's human safety. And we take that very seriously. And secondly, I think it's important for all of us who are elected and who work in nonprofits to educate people. Whether you're talking about educating residents or the business community or developers, everybody needs a little education now and then. Some people need a lot of education all the time, and that's why we're here today. Just a little bit about Lambertville. So I've been the mayor now it's been my pleasure to be the mayor for 3.5 years, and I started just after, about three months after Ida struck and really decimated Lambertville, causing more than $12 million in damage. And you can see in the pictures here, in particular, the Village Apartments is a 44-unit apartment complex that was naturally occurring affordable housing. It's a real community asset. About 85% of that property is in the special flood hazard area. All 44 families that night were rescued by boat by the fire department, which had to break into the rescue squad to get a boat. We had all kinds of problems that night in terms of logistics, but everybody was rescued. Everybody made it out safely. The building was subsequently condemned. 4 years later, almost 4 years later, we are now going into an agreement with the property owner and a developer who's now meeting with the DEP to talk about stormwater management and that kind of thing. The point of that story is that, in the intervening 4 years, a lot's happened in Lambertville and a lot's happened in the state. The inland flood protection rules have been adopted. The city has adopted a much stricter flood control ordinance and a flood damage prevention ordinance. So we have protections in place for when this new complex goes up, and we certainly hope and anticipate that will protect our residents going well into the future. The city was just awarded last year a substantial grant from the Department of Environmental Protection to generate a resilience action plan. This took about a year, and the plan is on the city website. It has been complete. On page 67 of that plan are some maps with projected flood inundations in mid to late century, which showed that Lambertville, most of the downtown, will be between 2 and 6 feet of water at any given 100-year storm. So it's incumbent upon us to be fighting constantly for change, for better building codes, for safer ways of doing things, and to build education and resilience. And these rules do that, and they must be adopted, I think, in order to keep our municipalities safe. Whether you're on the Jersey Shore or the shore of the Delaware, whether you're on the banks of a creek in a woodland area adjacent to your neighborhood, or whether you're in a low-lying area of your municipality, climate change is here, and it's going to continue to plague us and to affect us in ways that we can never imagine. I'll tell one last story. On July 15th of 2023, I was setting up for a community picnic. There was a 35% chance of rain. We were inundated by sudden showers. It dropped almost 4.5 inches of rain on the city in less than 2 hours, caused incredible amounts of damage in the city. The our Department of Public Works ended up working 3 or 4 days worth of overtime to clear dead trees and to clear storm basins and detention basins and all that kind of stuff. So these things are happening more frequently, as we know, and I think that we have an enormous responsibility and an opportunity here to make sure that everything we are doing at our local level, at our county level, and our state level is in place to protect our residents and to further the goals of climate resilience. And with that, I will thank you again and turn it over to Dr. Barbara Rogers. She's the former mayor of Cranberry and the current Township Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have similar stories to the mayor of Lambertville. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today. As you know, flooding is very much in the news with the current tragic events in Texas and North Carolina. Today, I'm here to share Cranberry's experience with 2 extreme flooding events to give you a municipality's perspective on why we need the proposed NJDEP real rules. As a builder recently told me, the only thing that causes more damage than fire is water. Road closures, water rescues from submerged cars, traffic signals and power outages, homes and businesses inundated with over 4 feet of water. The main road through our carefully preserved historic village filled with water, and the dam on Brainerd Lake in the center of town was breached with upstream water. Tropical Storm Henri sat over Cranberry and drenched our township with an historic amount of rainfall, nearly 9 inches in 2 hours. Days later, local roads throughout the town were still closed or blocked due to flooding. Residents and businesses were filling dumpsters, and police continued to warn people not to cross temporarily erected barriers. We are thankful that our volunteers at the Cranberry Fire Company were able to use rafts to rescue stranded pedestrian and motorists in submerged cars. Our police managed road closures and sheltered stranded motorists at the station. Our DPW crew helped with cleanup, and neighbors shared sump pumps, hoses, and other tools with each other. We pulled together. Just 10 days later, Hurricane Ida struck New Jersey. Ida caused flash flooding throughout Middlesex. Motorists stay safe and avoid flooded streets. After these 2 events, the township formed a resiliency subcommittee. I worked with the volunteers, police, and DPW to identify our flood-prone areas and provided this information to FEMA to help them update outdated federal flood boundaries. Our township has 3 major rivers and brooks that flow from east to west. Each of these run the length of the township and flows through other nearby towns. Effective control of flooding requires working with surrounding municipalities. Once again, we work with other towns. Middlesex County recognized the tremendous impact and interconnectedness of these flooding events in our area and formed a working group to address it. I was part of this group that included 10 towns to initiate a study that looked at flooding in our area with a regional watershed approach across town boundaries to mitigate flood risk and increase resiliency to extreme weather and identify engineering, nature-based, and policy solutions to local flooding. However, as we all know, a municipality and a county can't solve this alone. Resiliency to severe storms and flooding events is complicated and requires resources and policies from all levels of government. There isn't a single cause for this flooding, but rather a multitude of local, regional, and global reasons. The recent State of the Climate report projects more precipitation and severe storms in the future, as you've heard from our previous speakers. New Jersey's current land use regulations rely on outdated data and need to be updated. We need additional tools now to protect our residents, municipalities, businesses, and our natural resources, and to protect our communities. The rules proposed by the New Jersey DEP include common sense steps based on current data that would improve water quality and reduce flooding. They encourage nature-based solutions, runoff volume reductions, and add stormwater management practices to areas not adequately managed. Climate change is a global challenge, but the impacts are experienced locally. Cranberry is just one of many communities in New Jersey that experience severe and chronic flooding. Cranberry residents have worked hard at preserving our town's historic character, and building resilience for its future will take careful, long-term visioning, planning, and effort at all levels of government. Water does not know town, county, or state boundaries. The New Jersey DEP real rules would allow for unified action across the state to protect people, property, and our natural resources. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Dillingham. I am the Executive Director of the American Littoral Society. For those of you who weren't raised by Jacques Cousteau, Littoral Society, littoral means along the shoreline. So my organization is a non-governmental organization, 4,000 members and supporters, and we're based in Highlands, New Jersey. We have a long history of working for the conservation of natural resources, habitats, and communities along the shoreline in New Jersey. More than 500,000 acres of our state is highly vulnerable to coastal hazards. We have the sort of dubious distinction of both sinking at the same time that the sea level is rising. So it's only getting worse with the impacts that we see from climate change, with increased flooding frequency, with increased levels of sea level rise, and other impacts. So the rules that we're talking about today are needed to protect both our communities, folks that live there, the folks that visit there, as well as our natural environment. I often talk about living with the Jersey Shore as opposed to living at the Jersey Shore, on the Jersey Shore. Coastal ecosystems and the landforms, the barrier islands that we see there are very highly dynamic, and they're always moving. So you have to figure out a way to live in harmony with that and to build with that in a way that both minimizes our exposures and our vulnerability to storms, to increased flooding, and to the increased hazards we're going to see along with climate change. So we need to learn how to live with the shore more than on the shore. These rules not only will help, I think, mitigate some of the risk of living along coastal hazard areas, but it'll also help us restore parts of the coastal ecosystem that have unfortunately been damaged over the years by ill-conceived development patterns. Inevitably around July, I started to get calls in my office about fish kills, thousands and thousands of fish up in the upper parts of the creeks and estuaries that are just floating dead. Of course, what the problem is that the oxygen has been dissolved out of the water due to the temperature, but made even more worse by nutrients and polluted stormwater that have fed the algal growth, which eats up the oxygen. These rules give us an opportunity to go back and capture development, redevelopment in particular, which is sort of the predominant type of development going on along the shoreline now, and subject to our stormwater regulations, and help address that problem. We also work extensively with many municipalities and mayors who are interested in finding nature-based approaches to mitigating the risks from flooding and from storms. That includes rebuilding beaches, that includes rebuilding salt marshes and oyster reefs. And we do that throughout the state, from the Delaware Bay up to Monmouth County and points in between. These rules will make the regulatory process much easier for those kinds of projects to move forward, so that hopefully, as we find ways to live with the coastline, we'll do that in concert with nature and how nature wants to shape the coast. Lastly, I just will comment that, we had a terrible tragedy just a couple days ago, and the response is always to plan after the disasters. And it's a terrible thing to think about the loss of life, particularly those children that were lost. These rules are giving us a chance to plan before the disaster happens. And I would urge Governor Murphy to move forward with them, to adopt them now, and to make everybody that lives along the coastline in New Jersey and other areas that are subject to flooding a little bit safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Coffey, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of NJPACT, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. And to echo what Tim said, I do want to take a moment and recognize and say that our hearts and our thoughts are with the people of Texas, particularly with the girls in that camp who lost their lives, and others who have been devastated by this trauma. We have an opportunity here in New Jersey to make better decisions that will quite simply protect lives, will save lives, and will protect property. And our opportunity lies in these NJPACT real rules. New Jersey protecting against climate threats, resilient environment and landscapes. And I want to talk a minute about what these rules actually do and the science behind these rules, because these are science-driven, common sense regulations. And quite frankly, there is a disinformation campaign that has been launched by those who would make profit over the pain of the people who will suffer without these regulations. What these regulations do is they take NOAA data, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration data, that looks at the melting ice caps, the subsequent sea level rise, the increased rainfall, because quite frankly, big storms are getting bigger and they will continue to get bigger for the foreseeable future. And it takes that into a calculation, and we have a very certain assessment of sea level rise, floodplain increase in New Jersey, thanks to Rutgers University professors using that NOAA data. And what these rules say, based on that science, is that we know by the year 2100, we can expect that sea level rise in New Jersey will increase at least 5.1 feet. At least 5.1 feet. And there's a 17% chance that it will be greater than that. And so what these regulations do is they say, let's build above that elevation so we keep people out of harm's way. That's simply what these regulations do. For those who would lie about these regulations and would issue disinformation about them, they are wrong. They are purposeful in their pushback to these regulations, or they're really bad at statistics, one or the other. We are asking Governor Murphy to adopt these NJPACT real regulations immediately. They were introduced last August. He has until August 4th of this year to adopt these regulations. These rules have been 15 years in the making. They have been through legal review, scientific review. There have been dozens upon dozens of stakeholder meetings with businesses, residents, scientists, nonprofits, insurance companies. These rules are well vetted, and they need to be adopted to protect the people of New Jersey now. So we're calling on Governor Murphy to do that today. Thank you.
Good morning. Don't worry, Jen. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Angeli Ramos, and I serve as the state director for the Sierra Club. So to Jen's point, right, this is an interesting moment in time for New Jersey, not just because we have less than a month for the DEP and the Murphy administration to take regulatory action on these rules, but it's also a moment in time where we are experiencing significant pushback from the federal administration, right? And this pushback comes in the form of cutting funds, right? We have all heard the significant cuts of funding for FEMA, for disaster relief, right? And helping those, our residents, our communities to actually improve and save their infrastructure that could be impacted by flood or severe weather. But we're also seeing something quite outstanding, and that is the cut of resources at the Weather Service. Like, after disasters happen, like particularly this one a couple of days ago in Texas, there's a lot of blame and finger pointing. It's this person's responsibility, this wasn't done correctly, etc. But if you really follow the money, if you really follow the resources, you can see that there is a significant cut from the Weather Service, which is ultimately the scientists and the experts that we relied upon to determine, is it really going to flood? Can we expect this flash flood? And how fast can they actually forecast these things so that people can prevent disasters, loss of life, loss of infrastructure, etc.? So we're seeing, I mean, this is a devastating situation that just happened in Texas, but the reality is that we're seeing this across the country. And so this is a very unique moment in time for New Jersey to take this opportunity to protect its people, because we are incredibly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change because of our very susceptible coastline. So we urge Governor Murphy to take action, to move forward his own idea of how to protect the people of New Jersey, right, through resiliency. And we're not really asking for anything radical. We're not asking for something completely outside of the box. This is just adapting to what we are already experiencing. I mean, just last week, there was a rain event and multiple streets in Monmouth County and in Ocean County flooded, with over 100 calls from residents reporting to the townships that their homes had flooded. This was just last week, right? It wasn't a hurricane, it wasn't a storm. These are just regular rainy day events. And the problem is that climate change continues to intensify, making our atmosphere warmer, making more water fall in shorter periods of time, and then saturating our ground really quickly, which is what is causing all of these flash floods events across the country. So this is a unique moment in time. We're being pretty much attacked by the federal administration. We need to protect the people in New Jersey. With cuts of funding from FEMA, cuts of resources from the Weather Service, we need to provide municipalities and the people with the tools so that they can protect their own properties, their own businesses, and their own life. So we urge Governor Murphy to make a decision and to move this forward, because New Jersey needs this now. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Potosnik. I'm Executive Director of New Jersey LCV. We are the political voice for the environment, and I'm here to say I'm a big fan of Governor Murphy. I am a big fan of elected officials and politicians fulfilling their promises, and we're here to ask the governor to follow through, to get across the finish line the life-saving NJPACT real rules. It's critical for our families. We want him to put people over politics, to put our future generations, our children and grandchildren, over profit margins for corporations that have taken over the political climate that we're in, where corporations can invest unlimited amounts of money to wield power like puppets. Elected officials are cowering and moving in different directions. We see what's happening in Washington. In New Jersey, when Washington steps back, we have a chance to step up. Governor Murphy has been stepping up. But in the next month, we need him to continue to move forward to ensure these rules get into place and protect our families and businesses from catastrophic flooding, from more frequent intense storms, from climate change. What we're seeing play out time and again, like TV reruns. We don't use that word as much because of on demand. But when you watch what's happening in Texas, you think about all these other storms, and they're happening one clip after the other, whether it was North Carolina, whether it was Ida, whether it was Superstorm Sandy. In Hurricane Ida, 30 people in New Jersey died. 4 of them were in low-income housing, people of color, limited mobility, on the first floor of a newly built building, and drowned in their home. With these rules, they would be alive. This is a life and death moment for Governor Murphy to fulfill his promise, to ensure our children and grandchildren are safe, to ensure that when people build a house, they know the government standards will actually keep them safe. If these rules don't go into effect, we'll be using flood data from before we really had what we would consider cell phones. This is Motorola V60, flip phones. Most people didn't have them. This is 1999. Today we have smartphones. We take that for granted. The technology we use today is so much more powerful than supercomputers back then, but the data we're using is from way back then. And how much has changed in our communities? Lives depend on this. Governor Murphy, do what you promised. make these rules permanent, protect our children and grandchildren, protect our businesses, protect our pocketbooks, not the pocketbooks and ledgers of the corporations that are trying to benefit by keeping us in the past with outdated data that is going to kill more and more New Jerseyans. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Ed is a tough act to follow. I am Michael Klein. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Pinelands Preservation Alliance, and our organization fights to preserve the Pinelands ecosystem and promote the Pinelands resources. 20% of the surface area of New Jersey is the Pinelands. It's 1.1 million acres, and the resources within it include Wharton State Forest. It's the largest single tract of land within the state park system, dozens of rare plants and animal species, and underneath it all is the Kirkwood-Cohansey Aquifer, which provides drinking water for about 1 million people and irrigation for about 200,000 acres of farmland. And flooding threatens the quality of this vital water supply. Stormwater runoff has been a perennial problem in the Pinelands, but the catastrophic storms that all of my colleagues have described over the past several years underscore the urgency of the real regulations. There was a microburst a year ago in late August, caused extensive damage in Medford and Evesham townships. In 2011, floodwaters from Hurricane Irene took out both bridges on Route 542 in Burlington County, requiring a 12-mile detour. And in November of 2018, nearly a foot of rain deluged parts of Wharton State Forest, making roads impassable and closing access points to 4 different rivers. The rivers and streams in the Pinelands feed fresh water to coastal estuaries like Barnegat Bay, but salt water is being forced upstream into the forest because of rising seawaters and record storm surges. This salt water is killing trees at the root, creating ghost forests, extensive stands of dead trees inside the Pinelands. It took millions of years to create the distinctive ecology of the Pinelands, but climate change, as we've been discussing this morning, is threatening it every day. New Jersey needs to follow the science and adopt the real rules as proposed to help save this precious resource. So thanks again for coming. Let me introduce my friend and colleague, Doug O'Malley, the Director of Environment, New Jersey.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you so much to all of my colleagues behind me and then in the audience as well. My name is Doug O'Malley. I serve as the Director of Environment, New Jersey. We represent more than 80,000 citizen members and activists across this great state. I wanted also specifically to thank the work of Mayor Nowick and former Mayor Rogers and Cranberry, and then also Mayor Gusiera, who wanted to be here this morning but could not because of a public health issue. I also wanted to thank the many organizations that are joining us this morning, including New Jersey Future, Brereton Headwaters Association, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, as well as the work of a New Jersey Sustainable Business Network that has supported this effort and could not join us this morning. That being said, why we are here is really simple, and we are here in Trenton for a very important reason, because we are in a floodplain. The picture behind me right here, it's not in this exact spot, but this is what Trenton looked like close to 4 years ago after Hurricane Ida. And where we are close to Delaware, too, is a reminder that Trenton, like many communities, we're not on the shore, but we certainly have seen flooding in Trenton, go all the way back to 1955 with the massive flood and then the multiple floods in the early 2000s. A lot of that flooding was based on not only rainfall, but our reservoir level. But you cannot fix climate change. You cannot fix extreme weather by altering the reservoir level up in New York. That's why we saw the flooding behind us in Ida from Trenton. That's why we obviously saw the horror and the damage in Lambertville and so many communities across central Jersey from Hurricane Ida. What I think is really impactful, and I really want to thank former Mayor Rogers for saying this, is that any elected official, anybody that has to clean up a community after it's been devastated, that is hard, back-breaking work, and that is emotionally and physically and economically taxing. And this is assuming that the damage is light. This is assuming that lives have not been lost. We lost 30 lives during Ida. And what we are hearing again and again this week after the disaster and the historic flooding in Texas is people saying, if we only knew, Well, we do know what the science looks like here, and I just want to reiterate that these projections are based on the best available science. We also can look at past experience. We know that sea level rise is impacting New Jersey twice as fast as other parts of the country. We've seen worldwide sea level has gone up by about half a foot. In New Jersey, it's 1.5 feet over the course of the last century. What we expect to see over the course of the rest of this decade into 2050 is additional sea level rise of up to 3 feet, and by 2100, up to 6 feet. And again, these rules in front of us, the New Jersey PACT rules, they are designed to ensure that the homes we build now will still be standing 75 years from now. These rules are more than 5 years in the making. They were put into place initially, with Executive Order 100, where Governor Murphy launched. This is January of 2020. So it feels like a lifetime ago, and in some ways it is. And the goal at that point with this executive order was to have rules in place in 2 years. We are now 3 years behind. We do have inland flooding rules in place. But as Tim referenced, more than 500,000 acres are at risk for coastal flooding, and close to half the state is impacted by what could be considered a coastal zone. So this is important to know. Yes, this does directly impact our shore communities, all 127 plus miles, but our coastal region is much bigger than the shore. It includes flooding all across New Jersey. And it's critical to know that the business community has been saying that they cannot meet these rules. These rules were designed after literally years of stakeholder meetings, of compromise, of ensuring that these rules will allow communities to continue to not only to survive and thrive, but to be here for the long term. These rules will not impact affordable housing. These rules will not impact the ability to get flood insurance. These rules will not impact the ability to rebuild. What these rules do, of course, is to ensure that what we build now will survive the test of time. These rules, when they were proposed more than 5 years ago, were innovative. It's been 5 years. The clock is ticking. The deadline to adopt these rules is in less than 2 months. That's why this coalition is joining together, because Governor Murphy and his administration have a clear choice to fulfill the commitment that he made more than 5 years ago to ensure that our communities are safe, not just for this year, not just for this decade, but for literally decades in the future. That is a commitment that is going to last much longer than, frankly, all of us here today. But we need to ensure that we are looking at the science, we are acting on climate science, not political science, and working to adopt these rules as quickly as possible over the course of the next 2 months. Thank you so much.
Again, thank everyone for coming. Thank you for all the hard work of my colleagues, our municipal officials, and all of our residents in New Jersey who have stood up and asked the governor to follow through on the commitment he made in 2020. We're here if there are any questions. I invite any of my colleagues to answer them if there are any. Yeah.
I understand there's some preemption issues having laxer rules in the state house. Is there anything stopping unis from adopting the proposed standard on their own?
In some cases, yes. So for one example, from a wetlands perspective, municipalities cannot go stronger from wetlands. There's a fun little statute, the Residential Site Improvement Standards, which would prevent municipalities from having stronger stormwater management from residential development. So there are many instances where they can't. And one community shouldn't be at the whims of another community. We should all be standing together.
I mentioned kind of when I was speaking that certainly municipalities can and should look at their ordinances, and working with New Jersey Future and the Watershed Institute, we did just recently amend our stormwater control ordinance. It's much stricter than the DEP model. We've got minor development in it. We've got we've lowered the impervious surface requirements. So we've done that. So I always encourage municipalities to talk to other municipalities and find what's right for them. Right, just because the state sends something down to you and says you need to adopt it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a good hard look at it and decide whether in its present form it's suitable for your municipality. And I know that a number of municipalities have adopted enhanced ordinances, but to this point, I couldn't say. I've only read the first 150 pages of the 1,044 pages of the rule, to be honest. What's that?
So disappointed.
I'm sorry. That's all you need to know, really. If you read the first 50 pages, then you'll be able to.
Talking about launching this campaign, what are you hearing in terms of any communications from the Department of Environmental Protection or the front office that makes you think that this might be on the road to getting derailed, that it might not make the September deadline?
So I'll invite some of my colleagues. I will say that some municipalities are passing resolutions against this rule. Some municipalities like Lambertville and Pennington last night and others are passing resolutions in favor. You know, the rumor mill is somewhat rife with these rules are going down in flames. These rules are going to be adopted. These rules are going to be significantly amended. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. Yeah, sir.
And we've seen intensification of letters going into the front office from the developer community and certain business communities opposing the rule, putting doubt into the science, which really doesn't make sense. And so we are just here as a response to that, right? Like, we should not continue to hear from voices that have been stakeholder throughout all of these years to continue to cast doubt on science.
Can you talk about the deadline? If the DEP is amenable to making any changes, how could that impact the deadline? Is it at all fungible?
So the deadline is not fungible. The rules were proposed on August 5th of 2024, and as per the Administrative Procedures Act, they have until August 4th of this year to adopt them. After that, we would need to talk about a reproposal of the rule, which then starts the clock over again. So we are here today because, yes, we have seen some scuttlebutt pushing back on the regulations, and I want to be clear that those who are opposing these regulations are telling lies about these regulations and/or are really bad at statistics. Because the fact of the matter is that there is an 83% chance that New Jersey will experience at least 5.1 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100. And that all hinges upon greenhouse gas emission reductions. If we are able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we can get a hold on how much increased flooding we will see through the year 2100. We are not, by any means, on track for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We are not in accordance with the Paris Climate Agreement. We are not, at this moment in this country, as the biggest greenhouse gas emitter on the globe, on track with a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I could say with a certain degree of certainty that we will be experiencing greater than 5.1 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100 in New Jersey. These regulations are about protecting lives. So any delay in adopting the regulation is a delay in protecting the lives of New Jersey residents. And so that's why we are here today calling on Governor Murphy, aware that this August 4th deadline is getting closer by the moment, calling on him to take action immediately. In the light of what we have seen in New Jersey, some of the photos behind us, in light of what we have just seen in Texas, in light of what we have seen in Kentucky, in light of the floods we are seeing across this nation, we know the big storms are getting bigger. We cannot make decisions based on old data. It does not reflect the future conditions that will jeopardize New Jersey's lives. And so that's why we're here today calling on him to adopt these rules immediately.
So what are the risks of two communities if these rules are not adopted? So the risks to communities if these rules are adopted is they will have a safer community as we continue to build. You know, as Jen said, people are providing misleading information or just outright telling tales. You know, the day after this rule is adopted, no one with a building will have to elevate. Only as we continue to build and rebuild do we do elevation. We're already elevating. We're just asking to put it a little bit higher so we're above sea level rise. So that, you know, as others have said, you know, I have a house that's over 30 years. It's going to be there for another 30, 40, 50 years. So why not build for that anticipated future? Why do I build for the 1960s or 70s? You know, as Ed said, I wouldn't want to use a cell phone from the early 90s. I want to use today's cell phone.
Let me just, can I mention one additional risk is if the rules are adopted, you might risk retiring sooner because you have more money in your pocket because you don't have to rebuild your basement. You might risk having more money in your pocket because your insurance rates aren't going to go through the roof, or you'll be left uninsured, like is happening in Florida. In certain coastal communities, they're not able to get insurance. It's sometimes $20,000 to get homeowners insurance. $20,000. All that money could go into your retirement account, and if these rules are adopted, you could risk early retirement. That sounds wonderful. Your family could live instead of getting flooded out. You know, the positives for this are really strong, and the negatives for a few more steps to get up to your house, the cost of that versus the cost for our lives to know you don't have to rebuild is very de minimis, and the cost of the house construction itself. And I say that as a licensed contractor and someone who's built homes myself. You know, a lot of the information that's going out there from the building industry is about this massive added cost. I mean, you go up a few more feet of foundation, a little more longer wire. Maybe it's less wire because the building's higher, so the wire's shorter to get to it. You're not adding significant amounts, but what you are adding is the ability to stay in your home and be safe, protect first responders' lives, have a home that's insured, and retire sooner.
I just wanted to give a municipality perspective. As I said before, municipalities and counties can't solve flooding alone. That's why if each municipality adopted something, you know, piecemeal, it doesn't work. There isn't a single cause to flooding, but rather a multitude of local, regional, and global reasons. Municipalities need additional tools, and these are them now to protect our residents, municipalities, et cetera. The proposed rules would allow for unified action to invest in resiliency across the state, you know, as well as locally, to protect life, property, and our natural resources now and in the future. So I just wanted to give you that perspective too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be around. But if you click on the ads, there is an action alert to follow up with the governor, again, urging him to follow through on his commitment, his promise in 2020 to adopt these rules. Please click on it. Please go to any of our organizations. We have an action alert. Please reinforce our commitment, and please reinforce the governor's commitment. We did talk with the governor's office in May. So, yeah. We made the case, and we did not get a commitment that they were going to be adopted as proposed.
There were still conversations
Yeah.
as of that
So-
last meeting.
Yeah.
There could be changes